Ethan stood in the cold, dimly lit prison cell, his hands bound tightly by chains. His heart raced, but his mind remained calm. The alien guards had left him here to rot, thinking that a human soldier was nothing but a weakling, someone who could be easily broken. But they didn't know him. They didn't know what he was capable of. The cell smelled of dampness and the heavy scent of rust. The floor was hard, covered in dust, with no sign of life other than himself. The chains around his wrists were thick and cold, but they didn't hold his spirit. They thought these chains would keep him down. They were wrong. Ethan had been captured during a mission deep in alien territory. He had been sent to retrieve information about a hostile alien race that had been causing problems for the galaxy. But instead of completing his mission, he found himself caught by the very aliens he was supposed to learn about. The first few days had been rough. The aliens were merciless, treating him like nothing more than an animal, a prisoner with no rights. They showed him no respect. He had been thrown into this cell with only the barest of comforts, a small cot that was far too uncomfortable for a man who was used to the battlefield. But Ethan was used to adversity. He had faced impossible situations before and had come out stronger. This would be no different. The chains might hold his body, but they couldn't break his resolve. He wasn't going to stay locked up forever. He sat on the cold floor, trying to loosen his wrists, feeling the burn of the metal digging into his skin. His muscles ached from the strain, but he didn't give up. That was not in his nature. Ethan was a soldier, a fighter. He had learned to survive in the toughest of situations, and this was no different. His mind was always working, planning his next move. He thought about the guards, how they only came once a day to check on him. They never stayed long enough to really notice him. Ethan knew that would be his chance. Suddenly there was a sound from outside the cell. The door creaked open. A figure stepped into the room, and Ethan looked up, expecting it to be another guard. But it wasn't. This time, it was an alien woman. She was unlike the others he had seen before. She didn't wear the harsh armor or the heavy weaponry that most of the alien soldiers carried. Instead, she wore simple clothing, more like a robe than anything else. Her long hair flowed down her back, and her skin glowed softly in the dim light. Her eyes, a deep shade of violet, seemed to pierce through the darkness. Ethan's heart skipped a beat, and for the first time since his capture, felt a strange sense of calm. The alien girl stood silently in the doorway, watching him. She didn't move forward at first. Her gaze was intense, almost as if she was trying to figure him out. Ethan's gaze never left hers. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if they were locked in a silent battle of wills, two beings from different worlds standing on the edge of something neither of them fully understood. After a long pause, she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "I've been watching you," she said. Her voice was musical, the words flowing smoothly, but there was a weight to them, as if they carried more meaning than the simple statement. Ethan didn't reply right away. He wasn't sure how to respond. He had been in this situation countless times before, facing interrogation or taunts from enemies. But this was different. This alien didn't seem like the others. She wasn't speaking to him with disdain. Instead, there was a curiosity in her tone, curiosity that made him wonder what she saw in him. "You're not what I expected," she continued, stepping closer to the cell. Most humans would have given up by now. Ethan looked down at the chains around his wrists. "I don't give up," he replied simply. The alien girl tilted her head, clearly intrigued by his response. She took a step closer, and Ethan noticed that she wasn't armed. This was strange. Why would an alien of such apparent rank come to speak with him without the usual guard or weapons? What was her purpose? "You're strong," she said, studying him intently. "Stronger than anyone I've seen before, but you are still trapped." Ethan's eyes narrowed. He didn't like the feeling of being studied like an experiment. But there was something about her that was different. Something ... human, in the way she spoke. He could sense that she wasn't like the others, who saw him as nothing more than a prisoner. "I'm not trapped," he said. "These chains may hold me for now, but they don't own me. I'll get out." The alien girl seemed to pause at that, her violet eyes, watching him carefully, For a moment, it was as if she was weighing his words, deciding whether to believe them. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and reached out a hand. Ethan froze, unsure of what she was about to do. But instead of hurting him, she placed her hand gently on the chains that bound him. For a moment, he thought she might release them, but instead, she said softly, "I will help you." Ethan was taken aback. Help? Why would she want to help him? She was an alien. She was part of the very race that had captured him. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw something different, something he hadn't expected. Compassion, a spark of understanding. She didn't look at him with the same contempt that others did. She saw him as more than just a prisoner. Ethan didn't know why, but in that moment, Lyra looked at him with the same intensity she had the first time they met. Her violet eyes were fixed on him, almost as though she could see through him. For a moment, the room was filled with a heavy silence. Ethan couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking. Was she still deciding whether to help him? Or was she here for something else? "You're different from the others," she said quietly, almost to herself. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" Lyra's lips twitched slightly. "Don't beg for mercy. You don't scream. You just wait." Ethan let out a short laugh. "What else can I do? I'm not the one holding the keys to the door." She studied him for a moment longer, before gesturing for the shadow behind her to come forward. Ethan's eyes widened slightly when he saw the figure step into the light. It was another alien, but unlike the ones he had seen before, this one had a different kind of presence. He was tall and wore a sleek black uniform, adorned with glowing symbols that Ethan couldn't understand. The alien's expression was unreadable, but there was an air of authority around him. "This is Commander Kale." Lyra introduced him, her voice steady. "He's one of the high commanders in our military." Ethan's gaze flicked between Lyra and Kale. He didn't trust the commander, not yet, but he knew that Lyra had brought him here for a reason. She could have left him alone, but instead, she had chosen to bring him before this powerful figure. Kale's eyes briefly flickered to Ethan, then back to Lyra. There was a clear moment of tension between them, but Lyra's face remained calm. She didn't seem to fear Kale, which told Ethan that their relationship was far more complex than what appeared on the surface. "You brought him here for what reason?" Kale asked, his voice cold but curious. Lyra didn't hesitate. "I want to know more about humans," she said firmly. "Ethan is not like the others. He's not weak. He broke his chains, and I believe he has the potential to be more than just a prisoner." Ethan was surprised by her words. He had not expected her to defend him, especially not in front of someone so important. His respect for her grew, even though he still didn't fully understand her motives. Kale looked at Ethan with a calculating gaze. "You're human, weak. You can barely survive outside your planet. How could you possibly be of any use to us?" Ethan's jaw clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I've survived worse," he said simply. "You have no idea what I've been through. You don't know what it's like to be underestimated at every turn." Lyra didn't let Kale respond right away. Instead, she turned to Ethan, a soft look in her eyes. "You've been through more than I know," she said. "That's why I'm here. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to understand you." Ethan stared at her, confusion and admiration swirling within him. There was something about the way she spoke that made him feel like she was speaking from a place of honesty. Despite the cold, mechanical world around them, there was warmth. In her words, she wasn't like the others who only saw him as a prisoner. She saw him as a person. "You don't have to be here," Ethan said, his voice low. "This is dangerous for you. You don't have to risk your position for a human like me." Lyra's expression softened, but she didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at Kale. The commander was silent, watching the exchange with mild curiosity. Didn't speak, as though he was waiting for Lyra to make her decision. Finally, she turned back to Ethan. "I've decided," she said, her voice resolute. "I'm going to help you escape." Ethan blinked, surprised by her bold declaration. "Escape?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, I'll do what I can to get you out of here. But you must understand this will not be easy. If we're caught, the consequences will be severe." Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He'd been in tough situations before, but nothing like this. It wasn't just about breaking out of a cell. It was about escaping from an entire alien empire, one that would surely stop at nothing to capture him again. But even as fear crept in, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. This alien woman Lero wasn't like the others. She was offering him something he hadn't dared to hope for. Freedom. You don't have to do this, Ethan repeated, his voice full of gratitude. But if you're serious about helping me, I'm in. Just tell me what to do. Lyra's eyes shone with something unspoken, something deeper than just her desire to help. She had made her choice, and there was no turning back. Meet me tonight, she said. I'll be waiting. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Ethan with a sense of determination he hadn't felt in days. For the first time since his capture, he felt like he had a chance. A real chance to escape and maybe, just maybe, to find a new future. As the door closed behind Lyra and Kale, Ethan sat back against the wall, his mind racing. He had to get ready. This was his chance. He wasn't going to waste it. Ethan waited, his thoughts racing. He had been stuck in that cold, damp cell for what felt like an eternity. But now, everything was different. Lyra had promised to help him escape, and for the first time in days, he allowed himself to hope. The plan she had spoken of, though still unclear, was his best shot at freedom. That night, as the stars outside the alien prison twinkled faintly through a small crack in the wall, Ethan waited. He was used to the silence, but tonight, the quiet felt different. It was as if the whole world was holding its breath. Every sound seemed amplified, the distant hum of alien technology, the soft drip of water from the ceiling, the rhythm of his own heartbeat. The door to his cell creaked open, and Ethan's head snapped up. Standing in the doorway was Lyra, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light. She wasn't alone this time. The guards stood behind her, but they didn't appear to be paying much attention. They were there for show, Ethan realized. Lyra had cleared the way for HIMG. He wasn't just breaking out of a prison. He was stepping into a new world, one full of uncertainty and danger, but also possibilities. As he stretched his sore limbs, Ethan noticed a small rectangular device in Lyra's hand. It was unlike anything he had seen before, sleek with glowing blue lines running across its surface. She held it out to him. "This will help you," Lyra said, her voice soft but firm. "It's a personal cloaking device. It'll make you invisible to their sensors for a short time. It won't last long, but it'll be enough to get you past the guards." Ethan took the device, turning it over in his hands. He wasn't sure how it worked, but he didn't need to know the details. All he needed was to trust Lyra. He could see the determination in her eyes. She was taking a huge risk by helping him, and somehow that made him feel even more determined to succeed. "Thank you," he said quietly. He didn't know how else to express his gratitude, but the words felt inadequate. This was more than just a gift, it was a lifeline. Lyra gave a small nod, her expression serious. "You don't need to thank me yet. We're not out of here yet." The guards looked at the two of them, their attention divided. Lyra didn't waste any time. She turned toward the door, signaling for Ethan to follow her. "Stay close," she whispered. Ethan nodded and moved swiftly behind her. They walked through the narrow corridors of the alien ship, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the cloak. Ethan could feel his pulse quicken as they neared the main hall. The device in his hand hummed softly, a reminder that their time was limited. Lyra glanced back at him, a reassuring smile on her face. "We're almost there. Let's keep moving." They reached the hall, and Ethan could see the glowing panels and sleek metal walls that stretched out in front of him. There was a sense of order here, a cold precision that made everything feel too perfect, too controlled. It was a far cry from the chaos of the battlefield he was used to. But the silence in this place felt just as dangerous. They passed by, too. Guards at the entrance, their eyes scanning the area, but never once pausing to look at Ethan and Lyra. The cloaking device was working perfectly. Ethan could hardly believe how easy it was. It felt almost too simple, but he knew better than to question it, as they moved deeper into the ship. Lyra led him down a series of winding corridors, each one more confusing than the last. Ethan had no idea where they were going, but he trusted her. She had been here longer than he had, and her knowledge of the ship's layout was invaluable. Finally, they arrived at a small door. Lyra pressed a button, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Behind it was a small room, nothing more than a storage area, but it was their escape route. "This is it," Lyra said. "There's a transport ship just outside. It'll take you to the escape pods. From there you can make it to the outer rim and get lost in the galaxy." Ethan could hardly believe it. He was so close to freedom, but a part of him hesitated. "What about you?" he asked. "What will happen to you?" Lyra's expression softened, but there was no fear in her eyes. "I've made my choice. This is what I want. You'll be safe." Ethan felt a pang of guilt, but he didn't have time to dwell on it. There was no going back now. He had to leave for both their sakes. He turned to face her, his voice steady. "I'll never forget this." Lyra smiled, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place. "I don't want you to. But you need to go now." With one last look, Ethan stepped into the transport ship. The door slid shut behind him, and as the ship began to lift off, he could feel a weight lift from his shoulders. The stars outside the window were so much closer now. He was free. But as the ship moved deeper into space, Ethan couldn't help but wonder what would happen to Lyra. Would she be safe? Could she follow him? Or would she stay behind, risking everything to help a stranger? The answers were unknown. But for now, Ethan had his freedom. And that was enough. Ethan's heart pounded as the transport ship sailed through the dark expanse of space. The stars outside the window were breathtaking, twinkling like scattered jewels across a deep black canvas. But even as the view offered a sense of freedom, his mind was filled with uncertainty. He was free at least, physically, but what awaited him beyond the safety of the transport? What would he do next? The ship was quiet, with only the hum of its engines breaking the silence. Ethan's thoughts turned back to Lyra. He hadn't seen her since they had separated. Was she all right? What would she do now that he was gone? Couldn't help but worry about her. She had risked so much to help him. And now she was alone. But he knew he couldn't focus on that now. There was still a long road ahead of him. He had to make it to the escape pods and get out of the alien-controlled space before they realized what had happened. He glanced at the display panel in front of him. The course was set for the outer rim of the galaxy, far from the alien ships that patrolled the area. Transport ship moved smoothly, undetected by the alien systems that would be looking for any sign of an escape. The cloaking device Lyra had given him was still working, keeping him hidden from the prying eyes of the alien fleet. It was then that a sound echoed through the ship, a soft mechanical click, followed by a whir. The ship's systems had detected something. Ethan's pulse quickened. Had they been spotted? He quickly checked the control panel, his hands moving swiftly across the buttons. His eyes widened in shock as a map of the galaxy appeared. They were approaching a larger fleet. The alien ships were massive, their sleek designs unlike anything Ethan had ever seen before. They had made it past the first line of defense. But now, they were heading straight toward the heart of the alien-controlled territory. Ethan's mind raced. He had to make a decision. He couldn't turn back. But he didn't want to, and altered the course. The ship's engines hummed as the course changed, and Ethan could feel the tension rise as he gripped the controls. Another message came through the comm system. This time, it was Lyra's voice. "Ethan, listen carefully," she said, her voice crackling through the static. "I've been watching your progress. You're heading toward the fleet, and they will find you soon. I'm going to try to create a diversion, but you need to make it to the escape pods. It's your only chance. If you can't make it, find the hidden entrance to the underground tunnels. There in the lower levels of the fleet." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Hidden tunnels. He had no idea what she meant, but he knew he had no choice. He had to trust her. "Thank you, Lyra," he whispered, knowing she couldn't hear him. The message ended abruptly. The ship was now speeding through the vastness of space, heading straight for the enemy fleet. Every second felt like an eternity. The glow of the alien ships became brighter as he drew closer, and the unmistakable hum of the fleet's engines echoed in the distance. Ethan's thoughts raced. What was the alien society like? What would he face if he made it through the fleet? Would he find a way to blend in? Or would they chase him down until the end of his days? He didn't know. But one thing was certain. The alien world he was stepping into was unlike anything he could have imagined. As he neared the fleet, the tension grew. Ethan's hand hovered over the controls, ready to make the next move. The moment was coming, and then, just as the ships loomed closer, a loud explosion echoed through the distance. It was faint, but it was enough to shake the ship. Ethan's heart skipped as he realized what had happened. Lyra had done it. She had created the diversion. The explosion was a perfect distraction, drawing attention away from Ethan's path. He couldn't waste any time. He guided the ship swiftly through the crack in the fleet's defenses, using the chaos to slip through unnoticed. Ethan's hands were shaking as he steered the ship, narrowly avoiding an incoming energy blast from one of the alien ships. The distance between him and the fleet began to grow, and his heart began to settle. He was escaping. For now anyway, finally he reached the escape pods. It's the small ships that would take him farther from the enemy and toward the safety of the galaxy's outer rim. He detached the transport ship and entered one of the pods. The pod's engines fired up. He leaned back, exhaling in relief. But the feeling of relief didn't last long. There was still so much unknown. Would Lyra be able to follow? What would he find when he reached the outer rim? And, most importantly, would the alien society that had held him prisoner come after him, no matter how far he ran? Only time would. Till Ethan sat in the small escape pod, the darkness of space surrounding him. He had made it past the alien fleet thanks to the explosion Lyra had caused. The pod hummed softly as it moved farther from the battle, but his thoughts weren't on the ship's journey. His mind kept returning to Lyra. Had she made it out too? Was she safe? The thought of leaving her behind felt wrong, but he had no choice. She had helped him escape, and now he had to survive. The pod was equipped with basic navigation systems, but it wasn't much. Ethan had learned how to use it quickly. He glanced at the screen, watching the distant stars blur by as the pod traveled at high speed. His heart was heavy, knowing that every second was another step into the unknown. He thought back to their first meeting. When he had been locked in that prison cell, chained and broken, he had never imagined that someone like Lyra would come into his life. An alien from a species he had once feared, now offering him a way out, a chance to escape. It felt surreal, like a dream, but she had done it, she had helped him. And in the process, she had shown him a side of the galaxy. Never thought he'd see one filled with complexity, hope, and danger. Ethan knew he couldn't simply ignore her now. The fact that Lyra had risked everything for him weighed heavily on his mind. She had been a part of this alien society, one that had treated humans like nothing more than prisoners or enemies. Yet despite everything, she had believed in him. She had chosen to help him escape. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft ping from the control panel. The display blinked to life, showing a blinking red light. He was nearing a safe zone, an area where the alien fleet's sensors couldn't reach. This was the last part of the journey, the escape. Ethan tightened his grip on the pod's controls and leaned back in his seat. The pod would soon leave the alien-controlled area and enter neutral space. He could relax just for a moment. The danger was still out there, but for now, he was free. As the pod continued its journey, Ethan decided to send a message. He knew it was risky, but he had to try. Maybe, just maybe, he could get a message to Lyra. He had to know if she was. Okay, he tapped into the communication system. And after a few moments of uncertainty, a soft beep confirmed the signal was being sent. He wasn't sure who would receive it, but it was worth the risk. The message was simple. "Are you okay? I'm free, but I won't forget what you did. Thank you." He paused, staring at the screen as the message sent. The words felt empty compared to what he truly felt, but it was all he could do.
He could.
Only hope that Lyra would receive it. If she didn't, he would find her again. He had to. As the hours passed, Ethan's mind wandered. The escape pod was small, but it provided the comfort of isolation, and with that, time to think. He thought about the alien society that had held him captive. What kind of place was it? How had it shaped Lyra into who she was? She had been part of that world, and yet she had chosen to help him. That was something Ethan could never forget. The pod's alarms chimed suddenly, pulling Ethan from his thoughts. He sat up straighter, scanning the controls. A new signal had come through. It was faint, but it was there. His heart skipped a beat. The message was clear. I'm alive. Don't worry. Stay strong. I'll find you. It was Lyra. Her message wasn't. As clear as it could have been, and it sounded strained, as if she were on the move. But hearing those words, knowing that she was still alive and thinking of him, gave Ethan the strength he needed. She had survived. She was out there, and somehow they would find each other again. For a moment, Ethan allowed himself to smile. The weight that had been pressing on his chest for days now felt lighter. He wasn't alone. Lyra wasn't just some alien that had helped him escape. She had become his ally, his friend. The connection they had formed in the prison, the trust they had built, was real. And though they were separated now, Ethan knew they weren't done. There was still so much to explore, so much they could do together, if only they could find each other again. But that was a long way off. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the galaxy was vast. Ethan would need to be careful. The alien society, though weakened for now, would not forget him. The danger would always be there, lurking just beyond the stars. Ethan refocused on the task at hand. He wasn't just running from his past anymore. He was moving toward a future he hadn't thought possible. A future where the boundaries of species and alliances didn't define him. He was human, yes, but he had learned that there was more to him than just his race. There was strength in his will, in his heart, and in the people he had met along. The way as the pod entered the neutral zone, Ethan saw a small planet ahead. It was a quiet place, far from the chaos of the galaxy's larger civilizations. It looked peaceful, like a fresh start. For the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan allowed himself to relax. He wasn't sure where his journey would take him next, but he knew one thing for certain: he wouldn't be alone. And whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them head on, just as he always had. The road would be long, but he wasn't afraid. He had already fought for his freedom once, and with Lyra's message in his heart, he knew he would fight again this time. For their future, Ethan's pod drifted through the vast emptiness of space. The quiet hum of its engines the only sound breaking the silence. His eyes were fixed on the stars outside, but his thoughts were far away, consumed with everything that had happened in the past few days. Freedom had come with a price. Though he had escaped the alien fleet, the danger was far from over. Lyra's words echoed in his mind, "I'll find you." She had made a promise, and Ethan couldn't help but hold on to that hope. Even as he faced the uncertainty of his situation, the neutral zone was far from the safe haven he had imagined. It was an area where smugglers, bounty hunters, and other travelers crossed paths, and it was rarely monitored by any central authority. In many ways, it was the perfect hiding place, but it was also the perfect place for trouble to find him. Ethan needed a plan, a way to stay off the radar of the aliens who were still hunting him. He navigated the pod carefully, trying to stick to the less-traveled routes. His goal was clear: to reach a station on the outer rim, a place where he could regroup, gather information, and make his next move. But even as he approached the station, something didn't feel right. The station, usually bustling with activity, seemed eerily quiet. He slowed the pod, keeping a cautious distance. The station was a large, metal structure floating in space, its dark hull reflecting the stars in a way that made it blend into the surroundings. The few ships he could see were parked on the lower levels, and there was no sign of any patrols or guards. It didn't take long for Ethan to realize that something was off. It was too quiet. As the pod came closer, he keyed in the station's frequency on the comms, hoping to get a response. A few moments passed, and then a voice crackled through the static. "This is Station Zeta. All ships are to remain outside the docking area. We are under lockdown due to unknown threats. Any unauthorized vessels will be turned away. Ethan's pulse quickened. Lockdown? He knew he couldn't afford to be turned away, not with the alien fleet potentially tracking his movements. He had to find a way in. He thought about his options. If he tried to land without permission, it could cause more problems than it solved. But if he waited, he risked running out of time and resources. He stared out of the pod's window at the dark station, weighing his options. His instincts told him to act quickly. If he stayed too long, he might become a target. There was one route left to try: the hidden docking bays on the far side of the station. The place was known to be used by smugglers and those who didn't want to be found. It wasn't well guarded, and no one asked questions. Ethan decided to take the risk. He carefully navigated the pod toward the far side of the station, staying out of sight from any security systems. As he approached, he saw the dim outline of a docking bay, tucked away in the shadows. His heart raced as he lined up the pod with the bay's entry. There was a soft beep as the pod sensors detected the opening. Ethan exhaled slowly, letting the tension leave his body. It was a close call, but he was in. The pod slowly glided into the bay, and the hatch opened with a hiss. Ethan quickly exited, his boots making soft sounds against the cold metal floor. The space inside was dim, lit by flickering lights overhead. He knew this area well. It was quiet, far from the busy sections of the station. It's perfect for someone who needed to avoid attention. He glanced around, checking for any signs of activity. The place seemed deserted, but that only made him more cautious. His mind raced as he considered the next step. His first priority was to find information that would help him figure out what to do next. He needed to stay under the radar until he could find a safe place to hide. Ethan moved quickly through the station's halls, staying in the shadows. The quiet was unsettling. There were no signs of the usual hustle and bustle of a space station. No chatter over the comms, no movement in the corridors. It felt as though the place had been abandoned. He made his way toward the central hub, the area where he could find information about the station's current state. As he walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His instincts told him to stay alert. The station had been locked down for a reason, and the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he had walked into the middle of something dangerous. Finally, he reached a small terminal tucked in a corner. It was a simple, outdated system, but it would do the job. Ethan quickly tapped in a few commands, trying to access the station's records. His eyes scanned the screen, searching for any clues. The screen flickered, then showed a message: Station Zeta, under lockdown. Due to escape of dangerous human prisoner, high alert level, all ships will be searched. Do not engage. Ethan's heart sank. It was him. They were looking for him, and the station was locked down because of it. He had to move fast. The message was a clear sign that the alien authorities had already tracked him here. His time in this place was running out. Ethan turned quickly, heading for the exit, but before he could reach it, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. He froze, heart pounding in his chest. There was no time to hide. His mind raced for a plan, and in that instant, he remembered something from his training, a way to get past a situation like this. He turned, heading into an old maintenance shaft. To the side. It was tight and dark, but it would keep him out of sight as he crouched down. Waiting for the footsteps to pass, he thought about his next move. This wasn't going to be easy. He was still hunted, still running, but the stakes were higher now. If he didn't act quickly, the aliens would find him. He had one shot at the sand, he wouldn't waste it. The bond he had formed with Lyra, the connection that had started in that prison cell, was a constant reminder of what he was fighting for. He couldn't let fear stop him now. He had to stay strong. No matter the danger, he couldn't let the aliens win. With a deep breath, Ethan prepared to move again. The escape wasn't over. The real challenge was just beginning. Ethan crouched in the shadows of the maintenance shaft, his breath coming in quiet, controlled bursts. The footsteps outside were growing louder, closer. He knew that the moment the guards passed, he would need to move quickly. Every second he waited felt like an eternity. But he couldn't risk being spotted. The station, once a haven of hope for his brief escape, now felt like a trap. The sense of quiet urgency that had greeted him upon arrival had quickly turned into the unmistakable tension of danger. His heart pounded in his chest as the footsteps neared the end of the hall, and for a moment he thought the guards might stop right in front of his hiding place. But, to his relief, they continued past him, oblivious to his presence in the shadows. Ethan waited for a few moments more, just to be sure. When he was certain the guards were far enough, he quietly emerged from the shaft and moved deeper into the maintenance tunnels. The air was stale in the tunnels, a far cry from the fresh air of the outer rim. But the dark, narrow passageways gave Ethan the cover he needed. The station was too big, too chaotic now for him to simply walk around in the open. He needed to find a way out before the alien fleet tracked him down. As he moved swiftly through the corridors, he couldn't help but think back to what had brought him to this point. It had been weeks since his capture, weeks of uncertainty and pain. But with every step he took toward freedom, he realized how much he had learned about himself and about the galaxy. The things he had witnessed, the allies he had made, the enemies he had faced. They had changed him in ways he hadn't expected. Lyra was a big part of that change. The alien girl who had freed him from his chains, who had risked everything to help him. It's not like any alien he had encountered before. She was kind, compassionate, and despite the harsh world she came from, she had seen him not as a prisoner, but as someone worth saving. Her message earlier had given him the strength to keep moving forward. "I'll find you." Her words echoed in his mind as he made his way to a small hatch in the far wall of the maintenance tunnels. He had to believe in her. She had promised to find him, and for the first time, he had hoped that they could reunite. Ethan approached the hatch, his hand reaching for the lever. It was old, rusty, but it still worked. He opened it slowly, peering out to see if the coast was clear. To his surprise, there was no immediate sign of danger. He stepped through the hatch, finding himself in a quieter section of the station. This part wasn't on the main maps, and it was seldom visited by the station's inhabitants. This was exactly where he needed to be. The station was vast, filled with hidden nooks and crannies, like this one. It was a maze of long-forgotten hallways, maintenance areas, and hidden passages.
Yes.
This area had not been used in years, and to Ethan, that meant he had a chance to slip past unnoticed. He moved quickly, trying to stay out of sight of any cameras or sensors. The path before him was dark, but he was used to moving in low light. His military training had prepared him for moments like these, silent, quick, and efficient. After a few more minutes of moving through the quiet passages, Ethan came across a map of the station on a wall terminal. It was old and cracked, but it still showed a way out. A small, hidden docking bay was located on the far side of the station, far away from the main entrances. It was the perfect place to slip away unnoticed. Ethan's heart picked up speed. The way out was clear. He needed to make it to that docking bay as fast as possible, but he knew he couldn't rush. Every step needed to be calculated. He gathered his supplies from a small storage room he had found on the way. He packed a few energy rations, some tools, and a small blaster for protection, just in case. With everything ready, he set off toward the docking bay. As he walked, his mind wandered back to Lyra. He had to find her. They had started this journey together, and even though they were separated, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their paths would cross again. It had to happen. He wasn't going to leave without her. The thought of the alien fleet still searching for him gnawed at his mind, but there was a part of him that refused to let fear control him. He had made it this far. As he made his way through the dark halls of the station, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he had already begun to make a difference. Maybe he wasn't just fighting for his own freedom. Maybe this was bigger than that. He didn't know what the future held. But one thing was certain. His life had changed forever. The galaxy was full of unknowns, but he was ready to face whatever came next. He was no longer just a soldier following orders. He was a man with his own purpose, a purpose shaped by the bonds he had made with others and, with the hope of a future that was still to come, the station's hallways began to grow quieter as he moved deeper into the bowels of the ship. Finally, after what felt like hours of moving through narrow corridors, Ethan reached the docking bay. It was small, almost hidden from view, and there were no guards in sight. The air was still, the only sound being the soft hum of the stations. Engines far off in the distance, he quickly made his way to the ship waiting in the bahia, small transport that would take him to safety. His heart raced as he climbed aboard, checking the controls. It was a simple ship, but it would do the job. He powered up the engines, and with a final glance at the station's dark looming exterior, lifted off. As the station faded into the distance, Ethan allowed himself a moment to breathe. The escape was over, for now at least. There was still much to do, but for the first time since his capture, Ethan felt a sense of freedom. And as he looked out at the stars, he thought of Lyra once more. He hadn't forgotten her. He would find her, no matter where she was. He wouldn't stop until he did. The journey had just begun.